Good morning, brethren. The title of my message today is God Speaks to Us. And I would like for you that have Bibles, would you please turn them to Genesis chapter 41 and verse 16. Chapter 41, verse 16. So everyone here should be familiar with the story of Joseph. So Joseph was shepherding with his brothers. They were jealous. He offended them with his dreams. And if you recall, later on in this story, and where we're going to start here in verse 16 of chapter 41, is Joseph talking to Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh has had two dreams, just like Joseph in chapter 37. So let's read what Joseph says to Pharaoh. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "Not in me, but God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Now Pharaoh had said, "I had these dreams, can you interpret them?" Well, it was told to Pharaoh, Joseph didn't tell him himself, that he could interpret these dreams. Could he? And for us, what I hope that we all get from this message is, does God speak to us? So if you wouldn't mind going back to the beginning of the chapter, we're going to read the dreams. "And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kind came out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other side upon the brink of the river. And he slept." So Pharaoh awoke after this, then he slept again, and he dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up on one stalk, very good, very rank. And behold, 7 other ears that were blasted by the wind sprung up afterwards. The 7 thin ears devoured the 7 full ears, just like the cows, the ill, weakly cows had consumed the fat-fleshed ones. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled." This is Pharaoh. "And he sent and called for the magicians." So we understand this story. Now when Joseph shows up and he's talking to Pharaoh, there's very interesting what happens, and let's read that together in chapter 41, verse 14, for those of you that have a Bible. "Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon." However, this word is not dungeon in Hebrew, because if you recall, Joseph was thrown into the dungeon when he offended Potiphar's wife. But the word is beit sohar. Beit is house, sohar is restraint. But the word here is bor. Bor means pit. Was Joseph ever in a pit before this? I think he was. Let's keep going. Joseph, in the same verse, is given new clothing. Oh, that's interesting. So when Joseph was thrown into the pit, if you recall, in Genesis 37, what was removed off of him? His clothing. Isn't that, maybe this is just a coincidence. But remember, the title of this is, Does God Speak to Us? So, in 41 verse 14 again, it says that he was given a shave and a haircut, and he was given new clothes, and he came unto Pharaoh. He came unto Pharaoh. Well, ironically, when his brothers saw him afar off, the exact same word is used. Coming towards, when his brothers said, "The dreamer cometh, let us kill him." And here is the same exact word. Joseph is now coming to Pharaoh. So let's think about this. 2 dreams, pulled out of a pit. His clothing was taken away. Now it's given back to him. And then now he's coming to a powerful figure, or figures in the case of his brothers, at least over his life. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Let's keep going. In the next verse, chapter 41, verse 15, it reads, "And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream." It should be familiar. Joseph said these exact same words to his brothers in chapter 37, I believe it's verse 4. I have dreamed a dream. And then he describes the dreams to his brothers. We were all in the field, the sheaves of wheat. Your sheaves bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers were offended. But Pharaoh uses the exact same words. So this is now, 5 elements that are exactly in opposite correlation in Joseph's personal life. Let's continue on. As Pharaoh says to Joseph, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came out of the river 7 beautiful and well-formed cows. The words that Pharaoh uses are Yafeh Toah. Now, earlier in the Bible, now remember this is chapter 41 of the first book in the Bible, who in the Bible was called beautiful and well-formed? Does anyone know? You don't have to shout it out, but you can raise your hand if you know. That would be Joseph himself when he was in front of Potiphar's wife. He was very comely, is what some verses say, but the word is Yafeh Toah, beautiful and well-formed. And there's another person that was called beautiful and well-formed, and that would be his mother. And that's in chapter 29 in verse 17. Now this is interesting. This is 6 elements in Joseph's personal life that are now, obviously you can tell, are going in reverse order. So let's think about this. In verse 18, and behold, maybe it keeps going, or maybe, let's see. And behold, there came out of the river 7 kind fat flesh, and they fed in the meadow. But they fed in the meadow. Now, the 2 words, roe means, in this case, these are animals that are feeding in a meadow. Well, roe is also the word for shepherd in Hebrew, but only when in connotation to people are involved. Same exact word, but if you go back to Genesis chapter 37, Joseph is shepherding with his brothers. Well, the word here at meadow, because Hebrew is a consonant language, there are no vowels, it's the exact same root word for brothers. 37, verse 4, Joseph is shepherding in with his brothers, the sheep. And here you have the exact same words. This is the 8th element. So let's do the 9th. 41, verse 20. And the lean and ill-favored kind of cows did eat up the first 7 fat kind. Eat up. But they were, it says, lean. Some versions, the synonym is weak. Now let's think about this. Joseph's mother is described as beautiful and well-formed. These other cows are called weak. Who in the Bible that Joseph knows personally was called weak-eyed? That would be Leah, that's right. Leah. So you have 7 cows, 7 stalks that resemble him or his mother. And you have 7 weak or ill resembling his stepmother or his dad's other wife, his dad's first wife. So let's think about this again. What is the difference that Joseph now sees in his mind what is clearly happening? This is his life story in reverse order. Now imagine, what is the title of this message is, Does God Speak to Us? Well, if Joseph is paying attention, I think he can see the details, because we're going to get the answer to, how did Joseph tell Pharaoh, your dreams are one and the same? And he tells him exactly. Now think about this. All of us know this story. What is the significance of 7 and 7 in the history of Joseph's personal life? Let's look at it together. Genesis 29, verse 18. Genesis chapter 29, Verse 18. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years. This is how Joseph knows that the 7 and the 7 stand for years. Once Joseph knows this, he tells Pharaoh, well, it's obvious. You have to save. Joseph was very prodigious. We know at the end of chapter 39, it said that God was with Joseph, made him wise, and he was very full of understanding. Now, my last point, I want everyone here to think about, why didn't Joseph contact his father when he became the second most powerful man in the known world? Why didn't he do it? Think about the dreams. The dreams had significance for Pharaoh and for Egypt, but they also had significance for Joseph, because this is personal for Joseph. Those 7 of Leah swallowed the 7 of Rachel, and they looked exactly the same. Nothing had changed. They were the same. The sons of Leah were the same. Now imagine, what does Joseph do as soon as Benjamin comes? He tries to get him away from him. Remember this. Is he going to start like the Confederate States of Rachel or something in Egypt? No, but he clearly wanted to protect his little brother, the son of Rachel from the children of Leah. This is what I believe based on the evidence that why he didn't go immediately and seek out his father. So in conclusion, please turn to 1 Kings chapter 19. I think you would agree with me that God did speak to Joseph. 1 Kings 19, verse 11. And he said, go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and broke them in pieces, the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. The Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. God spoke to Joseph, and at the end of Joseph, after Jacob died, at the end, Joseph tells his brothers, God meant this for good. Our lesson that we can take away from this is Joseph saved the lives of those who wanted to kill him. That is a great example that we can take to heart.